So welcome to the Inspiring Yoga Teachers Virtual Summit, and today I'm super excited to introduce to you inspiring international Kundalini yoga teacher Kia Miller to the summit. Welcome, Kia, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Wonderful to be here. I'm sitting in my echoey basement where it's quiet in LA. So hi from my basement, belly of the beast.
So Kia doesn't need much of an introduction. She is one of the most prominent Kundalini yoga teachers in the world. And if you've practiced with Kia in person or online, you'll know that Kia has the ability to really translate her teachings in such a way that is accessible and makes you want to learn more. So Kia, you grew up in the Falklands and you moved to England and that's when you first came across yoga at just 15 years old. So would you tell us a little bit about those early days and when yoga first came into your life?
I first was turned on to yoga through a Raquel Welch book on beauty. And she had the 26, I think it is, Bikram postures. I later learned they were Bikram postures. And I remember thinking to myself, if it's good enough for Raquel, it's good enough for me. And discipline was never an issue. If I liked something, I could commit to it. So I did those postures, almost every day for a couple of years until I moved to London. And then I actually walked into the Life Center first and started practicing with Godfrey Defro and then a couple of other teachers and got way into Ashtanga really early on, which was just a miracle for me. It really was.
Amazing. And at what point did you know that you wanted to share yoga and become a yoga teacher?
I was living in Los Angeles and, a couple of things happened. I'd been in Northern California for a little while, and I remember very specifically this beautiful Ashtanga teacher called John Berlinski. He said to me, when life got in the way of yoga, I made yoga my life. And so I always remembered that. And then when I moved back to LA, Chuck and Maddie, who first opened Yoga Works, and Chuck was another huge influence in my early days, they were about to sell it, and they were doing their last teacher training together. So I just hopped onto it. And I wasn't sure that I was going to teach, but a friend of mine said to me, "You will teach." He's somebody that I really admire, another teacher. And so that also, all these little things just prompted me in that direction. And I feel like as soon as you are armed, so to speak, with all of these wonderful tools to share, then you start teaching anyway, because you want to share them.
Of course, yeah. It takes you down that path, definitely. My first experience of Kundalini yoga was with you on Yoga Glow a few years ago. So I'm speaking from my own experience here, but I see you as a teacher who really delivers an authentic but accessible experience for your students, and someone who really teaches from the heart. And this topic of teaching authentically and from the heart and finding your voice is something that many yoga teachers are struggling with. So I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about this today and just share with us how you have tapped into being able to teach in your most authentic way.
Well, I would say that, first of all, it takes a little bit of time to really access what is authentic to you. So what I tell young teachers or new teachers is that it's important to give yourself a little bit of time. And as they say, imitate first, integrate, and then innovate. So imitate, integrate that, and then start to innovate for yourself. And I will say that the Kundalini teacher training took me so deep into myself. It awakened such a sense of my own power and grace and connection that the authenticity of my teaching started to occur when I was introducing more subtle body information into my classes. And then the next level of authenticity comes, I believe, when you start to resource from your own practice, i.e. not looking outside of yourself anymore, not learning and studying outside, but actually, for me, the big flip happened when I recognized, wow, I want to create a new training. And I knew, oh, that new training is going to come from my own practice. So the stillness and the connection and the natural awareness and understanding of the subtle levels of being that come from that. Like that's, to me, that's the richest place of authenticity, because it's coming from within. And it's not coming from the mind anymore. It's a different place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So it's really about giving yourself time so that you can connect deeply with your passions and then translate that, I guess, across everything you do.
Yes.
And I think you do that really well. I mean, when you go onto your website, for instance, it's clear straight away that Radiant Body Yoga is really embodying you. You know, it embodies Kia Miller and what you have to offer. And I think you've been able to really present you and your brand really well through the use of your images and the fonts and the beautiful colors and all the gradients. You know, it really does authentically present or represent you. So could you share with us why you think that's perhaps important to create a presence that authentically represents you and how you've gone about doing that? So perhaps maybe a little bit of insight around the creative process that you go through.
Yeah, well, I was a filmmaker first, and so and also I modeled for 12 years before that. So I've had this relationship with imagery, with telling stories through images for a long time. So it was very natural for me to begin to create a look and a feel for what I was presenting. I don't even remember when the name Radiant Body Yoga came to me. I know it was a long time ago. But the radiant body in Kundalini Yoga is that expression of our royalty, of our deepest sense of self, like not the personality self, but that soul self. It's that subtle radiance of the soul, you could say. So therefore, I wanted my imagery to have that sense, and I wanted it to encapsulate what I feel are the most important aspects of the practice, whether it's sort of steadiness, strength, the radiance, devotion, all of that. And then I've been very fortunate that the photographers and the designer that I work with, before we started collaborating together, they took my classes for a very long time. And so they really understand who I am, and I work with the same people over and over again. And we have a lot of fun creating these images and videos. And so I think that's part of it too, just honing the right team of people who understand who you are and can help you to reflect that. And it's for me, at least, a really fun part of what I do.
Yeah, I love that. That's great that you can, that you can make it fun and you can make it part of the experience of what you do. That's really great. What advice would you have, or what advice would you give to teachers who are passionate about a specific area of yoga, but perhaps they're sitting on the fence about narrowing in for fear of excluding people from their community?
Oh, isn't that so interesting? You know, if we go back to authenticity, we have to, I believe, follow what we're inspired by. Because if you're inspired inspired to narrow down, if there's something that's fascinating to you, then it's going to be fascinating to people who are attracted to you and your teachings as well. I think that the mistake we can make is to look out and do that compare, contrast, sort of compete methodology, where we're figuring out how to fit in, or what is missing, or what we should be presenting. Whereas the beauty of this path of yoga is that it's an unfolding of our consciousness from one step to the next. And if we can be courageous enough to follow that inspiration when it comes and to really go there, then we start to polish the diamond of our own conscious self to the point where we really can impart valuable teachings to people. And the more we source and understand a particular topic on an intellectual and experiential level, then we can start to share that with people in a way where Yogi Bhajan said, the most powerful teacher is one who teaches through his or her presence. So i.e. that means you have narrowed down into an aspect of the yoga practice, whether it's pranayama or meditation or mantra or asana, and you really start to embody that energy at a deep level. And then you literally transmit from that place, and you start to understand. Like for me, in the process of understanding Kundalini Kriyas, it's come from within. It's come from the experience of them, and then just that, oh, I know what this is doing. Whereas maybe 5 years ago, I didn't know what that particular thing was doing. So I guess that's a long way of answering, but just to say, really follow your inspiration to refine a certain aspect of your understanding of yoga, remembering that yoga is a totality. It is a yoking, it's a unifying on all levels of being. But just because we narrow on something doesn't mean we omit everything else. And so I guess that's what I would say for that.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, it's about realizing that you can't be everything to everyone. And when you try to do that, then you actually end up, not serving your community in the best way that you could have, if you just really start to focus in on the things that you're passionate about. And actually your ideal students are passionate about those things too. And they're the people that you want in your community. So yeah, it's a really interesting point, and it's something that I share with the teachers in my community all the time. I'm always talking about it. But what do you think are the main challenges that yoga teachers are facing right now in 2018?
It's an interesting time. When I started, there wasn't the whole internet thing. So there was a very clear pathway. You built your classes in a studio, and you slowly, got better and better time slots. And maybe you chose, I've seen many people who just want to stay local, and they build that core following through their consistency of being there, day after day, week after week, year after year. But what's happening nowadays with this whole explosion of internet yoga is that there's a lot of teachers competing for the same spots in the busy cities, the same teaching slots. So it's a little more competitive, for lack of a better word. And then I think the challenge is trying to, in a very noisy world, making oneself seen, heard, and valued. So I'd like to say there's a formula for that, but where I come from in all of this is I do what I love to the very best degree that I can. I figure out the pathway. I always knew that I wanted to teach on the road, that I wanted to teach at festivals, that I wanted to offer immersive transformational experiences, something beyond just the regular yoga class. And so that's where my focus was. So knowing what your focus is going to help you. And then what I really believe is we trust the guidance and manifestation of the intelligence of the universe. And so that means that we're not resonating at a level of lack. Oh, if she got that position, that means that I can't. It's more like, wow, I have so much of value to offer. This is the direction that I want to go. I'm going to keep holding myself in the highest level of resonance by doing my practice, by paying attention to what I need to pay attention to. And I'm going to trust that the flow and the opening that is right for me is going to show up. And I see that when we really focus on our own practice from that sense of raising our vibration and attuning to that which we're calling in, then we can do it in an effortless way. And then we're not buying into the same consciousness that's driving so much of the business world in that compare, compete game. So just something to think about as we are, I believe, as yoga teachers, we're really heralding in a new way of being. And if we can bring this way of being into our business, into our ethical, moral sort of framework of life and be living the yogic lifestyle, we're going to become incredible manifestors. And this is something else that Yogi Bhajan spoke about, that as refined vehicles, really able to access our prana, our life force, really able to shift our state of consciousness, able to direct and focus our mind, we can become really powerful manifestors. And so to trust that, and we know when we fall into fear or lack that we're falling into the old paradigm. So this is the philosophy that I use in my life that has served me just so well. So that's where I go in these circumstances.
I love that. That's really, really wise words to keep tapping into that, certainly. And I guess, off the back of some of the challenges that are out there, there seems to be a growing number of teachers that are maybe experiencing exhaustion or even burnout because they're saying yes to every opportunity, every cover class that comes up. Maybe they're teaching 20 classes a week and they're traveling all over the place to different studios. This is definitely a story that I'm hearing over and over again in my own community. So what are your thoughts on this, and how can teachers perhaps reduce the number of studio classes and instead bring other ways of making money into their business?
Oh, that's such a good question. And there's so many layers to this, I think. One thing I will say is I think that many of us have a period where we can perhaps be that prolific in the classes that we teach, but we have to know there's an end to it. And we have to be ready to pull the plug on the things that are not serving when we recognize there's an end to it. So, for example, when I was really in the height of my teaching, I had 11 public classes and probably 5 private clients. And then I was teaching teacher trainings as well on the weekends. Now, I could only keep that up for a certain period of time. But being this sort of very loyal, very committed person that I am, I would have had a really hard time letting go of the extraneous classes if my husband hadn't been on my case, because he really wanted to hang out with me and I was always busy. And my telltale thing was that whenever somebody asked me how I was at that time, I'd say, oh, I'm so busy. Yeah. like it was okay that I was always so busy. And so that recognition that if we do decide to go down that route of that many classes, that there has to be an endpoint, because what happens otherwise, just as you so rightly said, is we burn out. And luckily, I never got to the burnout point, but I know people who do. So then there's just ways that we can be a little bit more, what's the word, discerning about the choices that we take. And if you have your bigger game plan set out, like you have an understanding of really where you want to go with your teaching, then you keep, and you understand what your mission is, if you like, then the decisions you make keep aligning you with that. So for example, I knew that I only wanted to teach locally. I wasn't going to get in the car and drive from Venice to Hollywood. That was just not going to happen for me, but I knew many teachers who did. So there's two things. Where do you want to build your community? And so do you really want to build a community 45 minutes away by car from where you live? Now, sometimes we don't have a choice. So fine, then we do that. But then we build that community. If we start to build a bunch of different ones, we're really depleting ourselves in my mind. So really honing in and focusing. And then we sometimes have to make that smart choice around finances and choose private clients over more classes. Or, as somebody so wisely told me at the beginning, keep your day job for a little while. And I did that. I moved from TV production into the story department so that I could teach my, what was then 3 classes a week, but I still had my regular job. So I could pay the bills and I wasn't stressed. And then slowly, I started to shift to less of that, more classes. And so that's another way to do it. But I think it's such a valuable question that you bring up, and it's definitely something that is affecting a lot of young teachers.
Yeah. I think that transition is really important, and I certainly did the same. When I quit my full-time job, I continued by doing some marketing freelance jobs on the side whilst I set up my classes and events and so on, and then, you know, slowly but surely was able to transition over. But it's important to still have money coming in, paying the bills, you know, whilst you're building up your community. And also I think this whole issue of burnout and, you know, exhaustion is actually very closely linked to perhaps the negative perceptions that some people might have around money and earning money teaching yoga. And I know for sure that many of the teachers in my community do struggle with this, and, you know, their pricing doesn't necessarily reflect what they're offering. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think you nailed it there. There is a tendency for people to think, because I'm teaching yoga, I can't ask for the amount of money time is really worth. So I think that we have to get real about what we feel our time is worth. Because if we start to give away our time for less than what we really recognize is our value, then we start to resent the situation, and then that causes a burnout really quickly. So it is important that we really value ourselves and the amount of study that we put in, not only the study within a training, but the study within our own practice, and that level of commitment. It's a lot. So valuing that is really important. And there was another part to your question. What was that?
I don't know. I think it was just about, just generally about earning money teaching yoga. A lot of people, there just seems to be in the industry this whole sense of, not talking about money, or just not really feeling like you can earn money teaching yoga. And I think in a way that blocks a lot of the abundance that you could bring into your business as a yoga teacher. I think, you know, it's trying to overcome that, I guess, that perception or that association that you might have with money, because the industry or certain people in the industry are kind of saying that.
Yes, you know, it's interesting. interesting. I used to donate, even in my busiest time, I would donate one class a week where I went to this teenage school in East LA, and I just taught them. That was my seva. That was my one moment a week where I would do that. And I also taught community classes, always. I would love to teach a community class where someone can come and pay less. Even right up until a couple of years ago, I had community classes. So I think that's important, that if we feel like yoga has become perhaps something that is for the privileged ones who can afford it, then we figure out ways that we can, without too much impact on our time, that we can give to those who perhaps can't afford it, and then hold our line when it comes to charging those who can afford it for the value of our time. And so that's one way that we can counter that. I remember somebody coming up to me when I was teaching at a music festival. I was teaching yoga, and he was really angry, and he was like, "What are you doing here teaching these privileged people? You should be teaching." And he really went off, and he couldn't hook me because I knew that I was already donating my time in a way that felt valuable, and that it was really okay that I was there at that festival and being paid well to teach. And so he couldn't hook. So as long as we feel good with where we're at, and accept that Yogi Bhajan, again, I keep quoting him, but he was very big on the power of manifestation that comes through yoga. Just accepting that as we're on this path, as we're moving energy and cleansing ourselves and heightening our vibration, we become more and more magnetic, more and more attractive, and opportunities come, and everything starts to flow. So if we focus on that and trust the process, and don't be afraid to ask what we think we're worth, then, you know, that's a good place to kind of get out of that poverty consciousness that so many get stuck in.
Yeah, definitely. I have a question actually from somebody in the community. So one of the lovely yoga teachers in my community, her name is Ellie Bakush, and her question actually it's linked really to what we've been discussing. But Ellie says, "I have a very hard time imagining myself selling and promoting what I have to offer. Something that is definitely linked to my struggle of not being enough. I'm always afraid I'm going to bother people with what I have to offer, and it's making me hesitant to work on projects that I really want to manifest, like teaching online." What advice would you give to Ellie?
I would say to Ellie to come into her heart, and as she's approaching all of this, just think about the value that she's bringing into somebody's life, rather than thinking about, "Oh, I'm pestering them to give me something." No, come into that state where you recognize, wow, I have this wonderful resource, these tools that can add value to this person's life. I need to let them know that there's these tools that I can share with them that is going to help their life become richer, fuller, more joyful, more clear, all of that. So it's about where we're coming from inside when we're sharing this. Remember, we're not doing this to get something from somebody. We are doing this so that we can offer the value of the teachings on the path of yoga. And remember, ultimately, it's not about us. We can become the conduit for this rich lineage of teachings to flow through at a time when people really, really need it. They need to know the value of taking a really deep breath. They need to know the value of doing a focusing concentration practice every day to start to harness the power of their mind. They need to know the value of working through some of the congestion in their physical body so that they can feel more free and empowered. and clear. And so that's what we are in the business of, sharing these very valuable tools. And when you come at it from that place, you will be magnetic and attracting those who are seeking the answers that you have, and that you're taking the time to study and prepare yourself to share it. So that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, I really love that. I think it's it's really important to think about the journey of your students rather than you. It's not about you, it's about them. And when you kind of flip it in that way, it takes the focus off you as a yoga teacher, it takes the spotlight off you, and it puts it on them and their journey and how you can help with their struggles and everything else. So that's really great advice. Thank you for that, Kia. So before we finish today, I'd love to get your thoughts on the opportunities that are available nowadays for teachers to teach online and to create online programs for their students. And I know that this is something that you've done yourself with your own online programs, and that you use strategies such as your ebook that you've got on your website in exchange for people's email addresses. And I've also seen in the past that you've used webinars to get people on your list. Essentially, you're sending them through a marketing funnel into your online program, and these concepts are completely new territory for most yoga teachers. So can you share with us any of your experiences of this, of going online, and how it's impacted your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, I'll say that I've been very fortunate to work with Yoga Glow all of these years, and they asked me to be exclusive to teaching yoga and meditation with them.
Yeah.
And in return, they really support me well. So that was a decision that I made way back. And so that's one way to go. So now I don't have to deal with any of the back end stuff of anything. I just show up and I teach, and I connect with people through this medium. And trust me, when I'm teaching, I'm feeling beyond the present moment, time and space, and I'm feeling into that like beyond time continuum where we're all connecting. And that happens to thrill me. So I love teaching online because I feel the heart and soul of those who will connect with me as though they're there with me right then. So I just wanted to say that because I think it's a very powerful medium, and a lot of us wondered how powerful it would be, especially for subtle body practices like Kundalini yoga. But the wonderful thing is it's incredibly impactful. So it's a great medium. What I would say is because, so now many of us rely on Facebook, we rely on Instagram, rely on Pinterest, or any one of these different social media platforms. The challenge there is that they change their algorithms constantly. So what might have worked for you to reach a lot of people yesterday may just be that it doesn't work for you today. And that's challenging. So then the next best thing that we can do is actually use those platforms to get people to sign up for our email list. Now we have a direct line to them. Now, obviously people don't always look at the emails, they don't always open them. But the most valuable thing you can have is a direct line to somebody that has in some way been interested in what you have to offer. So building your email list, anybody that you teach in person or anyone that you connect to, figuring out ways to offer great content for free and invite people into more stuff that you do. I mean, that's, I think, is like the marketing 101 in the online space, is keep offering great content for free so that you start to build energy and awareness around what you're doing and who you are. And people, so my thing is, I don't want to market to people from a fear-based marketing. I don't want to hook people into what a lot of marketers do that's based on fear. I want to appeal to somebody through the value that I can bring them, and trust that if they recognize and they feel inspired to say do a teacher training with me, that it comes from a place of inspiration, not because I've hooked into their fear and their lack. Like, this is really worth $16,000, but I'm going to give it to you for $2,000 today. You know, that kind of marketing is not really exciting to me personally, but adding value and shining the light and trusting that those who are attracted will come on the journey. That's been working really well for me. So I would advise everybody to do some research, maybe do an online marketing course, even if it's just a simple one, like how to maximize using Instagram or Facebook, and then start to funnel people into a newsletter list, and then start to add value through your newsletter. And have patience as you get the swing of this. And you'll probably have to meet many places where you meet your edge. Like, for example, I really didn't want to do live chats. It just felt corny to me. And I had to get over myself. And that was a moment of, okay, I'm just going to get over myself because I really want to communicate right now. And this is the way that I can communicate. So I think for all of us, we hit those places where we have to grow. We have to meet that edge of resistance and grow beyond it. Because if we're really going to work online, it's different than just teaching one-on-one. And so it's not just about teaching yoga now, it's about being a good marketer. And so therefore, just as we study yoga and how to teach yoga, we kind of have to study a little bit about the business part of it so we can match those two together and really maximize what we can offer. So, you know, it's a thriving world, and there's billions of people on this planet, and so many that could be helped by you. Not me, not somebody else, like those that are going to be attracted to you because of the way that you share your teachings. And I think that if we're called to do this, we're called to do it for a reason, and that there's value we can add. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the better we become as yoga teachers at sharing our message, so therefore we need to get better at the marketing side of things so we can share our message, then the more people will be able to get inspired by yoga, and the more people will come into the practice. So it feels like a win-win all around. But
exactly.
Thank you so much for this today. Do you have anything coming up that you would like to share with us, or, you know, where can we find you and connect with you online?
Well, I have a Radiant Body Yoga private group that I invite any yogis, yoga teachers to join me on. And in that page, it's just a medium to share ideas, whatever they are. You know, teaching ideas, marketing ideas. So I invite you to join me on that Radiant Body Yoga private group. And I have teacher trainings. It's just, that's my deep love in this life, is to train teachers. And so if anyone's interested in either a 200-hour or diving into my 300-hour course that includes a deep dive into pranayama, meditation, and how the mind works from the yogic perspective, awareness and lifestyle. It's a look at the Bhagavad Gita and the teachings shared there, how relevant they are for this era, and how to maximize those teachings in our life. Kriya, how to understand and incorporate Kriya and more transformational practices like that, mantra and the yoga of sound. And then my latest one is a sadhana immersion. So this is for people who really just want an immersive experience in some really deep practices that just take you into the stratosphere and beyond, to kind of open up to new levels of consciousness. So that's what I'm excited to be offering next March in India. So have a look on my website. Anyway, you'll find all of these things on there.
Perfect. And I will share the links to all of those things as well with this interview. Thank you very much for your time today, Kia. So grateful for all the wisdom that you shared with us. Thank you so much.
I hope to meet you in person someday. You're such a bright light. It's just a pleasure to connect with you. Thank you, Satnam.
Thank you so much, Kia.